W.E.B. Du Bois, Joseph Holley, and the Great Debaters, African American Education and Disabilities. Nancy Olson, EFR 500, March 26, 2017. Poverty, accommodation. All the black colleges had problems stemming from the poverty and limited backgrounds of many of their students. Though tuition was low, it was out of reach for many, and most students who started were unable to graduate for lack of funds. Grant 242. Poverty is a major stumbling block for any minority group. Attempts to accommodate minority groups are common, and care must be taken to ensure accommodation for the disabled does not become like the unfair accommodations given to the African American communities in the past. Violence. In Texas, they lynched Negroes. St. Augustine said, "An unjust law is no law at all," which means I have a right, even a duty, to resist. As the African Americans continue to resist racism through civil disobedience, so the disabled must continue to resist discrimination through civil disobedience. With the advent of Betsy DeVos as the Secretary of Education, an increase in charter schools becomes more certain. Why does this matter to minorities and the disabled as it pertains to education? African Americans had a shorter school term than whites. Their schools had less funding, and black teachers were paid lower salaries, which resulted in higher teacher-pupil ratios, overcrowded classes, irregular attendance, and deplorable work conditions. Charter schools in many cases require parents to sign away their rights under the Federal Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, forcing a substandard educational experience, much like African Americans of the past have endured. Prejudice. As stated by Du Bois, prejudice results in a double consciousness. It is a peculiar sensation, this double consciousness, the sense of always looking at oneself through the eyes of others, of measuring one's soul by the tape of a world that looks on in amused contempt and pity. Both African Americans and the disabled face daily prejudice. The new Secretary of Education, Miss Du Bois, has displayed ignorance of the plight of minorities and the disabled, and the widespread adoption of school vouchers will divert essential money for both groups. Courage. Another thing I impress upon my people, both by precept and by example, is that whether their educational opportunity comes from friends of the race or the taxpayers of the state, the end is the same, and that is to make good citizens. It truly takes courage to fight against almost insurmountable odds, as did Du Bois, Holley, and those in the Great Debaters. This courage will also be needed by those who fight to keep the funding for the disabled and the minorities in this new political climate. Disability, social status. Holley once stated, "The grandchildren and great-grandchildren of former slaves needed lessons in self-sustainability, thrift, frugility, honesty, obedience, deference to authority, and humble Christian living." Holley was willing to accommodate the needs of racism to improve African American education. If we are not careful, we will find we soon need to accommodate the needs of school vouchers while striving to maintain funding for the disabled and minorities. Du Bois, Holley, and the Great Debaters serve to remind us of the common threads of poverty, violence, education, and prejudice towards the disabled and minorities, and serve as examples of the courage it will take to achieve equivalent social status for both groups. References: Aldridge, D.P., The Educational Thought of W.E. Du Bois, An Intellectual History. Grant, D.L. and Grant, J., The Way It Was in the South, The Black Experience in Georgia. O'Brien, T., Perils of Accommodation, The Case of Joseph W. Holley, American Educational Research Journal. Washington, D., Black, T., Forte, K., Roth, J., Winfrey, O., Assail, R., Paro, J., Harpo Films, 2008, The Great Debaters. Thank you.